Well, welcome back to sound, the second of our little units. Hopefully I'll get the timing better this time and not have to add a little addition to that last podcast. So here we're looking at the idea of using sound to communicate. So how we send a message, the development of the telegraph, the telephone, how we use radio waves in AM, FM digital radios, the application of satellite technology and of course GPS, and that wonderful device, the internet, which you guys have lived with all your lives and appeared when I was in my early 20s. It's sad, isn't it? Getting old. Anyway, so humans have always communicated. Animals communicate now, but we've always communicated, and we've communicated. Fortunately, we evolved a structure that allowed us to make more concise sounds that allows us to talk to each other. So we've been doing that, but also we've been wanting to communicate further. So essentially, the basics have always remained the same. You have an idea, you code that message, you transmit it, you have some sort of channel for that transmission, which is received, message decoded, and then feedback might occur. So at the moment, I'm doing that with you. That's what I'm doing right now. I've got an idea. I want to talk to you about sound. I'm coding that message into a podcast, in this case, transmitting it via YouTube. You're hopefully receiving it. And as you watch and listen, that message is entering your brain and you're decoding it and hopefully making some sense of it and working out how you might feedback. What might you do with this information? Hopefully remember it for the test in about a fortnight's time. That'll be step one. So clearly, as we started to make little communities that were separated from each other, we needed to find ways of moving information. So pigeons, yeah, not too bad. Guys on fast horses, there were ways of moving messages, but they took a long time. And of course, if you're sending a pigeon, you can only send so much and you'll weigh the poor pigeon down. So one of the first developments was the idea of the telegraph. And it really is quite a simple idea. It relies on electromagnetism, and he simply has a magnet there on the diagram, and it had a striking part and struck the bell. Now he was able to send that through a wire down a line and have this occur at the other end, and you actually send messages. Now, you need a code for those messages, so of course Samuel Morse used Henry's discovery to build this idea of a Morse code. He made a little switch so he could do his dots and dashes to make that a simple system, and you had to learn how to do that. Now, my father-in-law was a ham radio operator, and he got his license in the late 80s to do that, and he still had to learn Morse code then, so I'm not too sure if you still have to now, but certainly late 80s, early 90s, Morse code was important for radio ham operators. And he was quite fast at it too, actually. He was very good. And then, some people thought we can do better than that. And this guy, Alexander Graham Bell, invented our first telephone. And it's interesting, his mother was deaf. And he worked with deaf people because she was being cared for and lots of her friends were deaf, you'd imagine. And he started looking at devices for making them hear better. And the outcome of that was a telephone. And basically the microphone converts the sound energy I'm making now into vibrations, which is what I'm doing anyway. I'm vibrating the air particles. But in this case, it was vibrating them and sending them into electrical flow down the wire, and at the other end, the receiver could reverse it and turn those vibrations back into words, which, when you think about it, it's pretty freaky stuff. It's taking my words, turning them into electrical vibrations and having them receive somewhere else. Of course, we do it now with mobile phones without the wires. It's amazing, isn't it? And people started searching around for what we're really working with here, so looking at radio waves. So we talked about light as an energy wave, and so is sound. So as you can see here, visible light is this area here on the electromagnetic spectrum. We have ultraviolet light, faster again, infrared light, slowing down, and then sound waves are up here. They're much slower, so they have less energy than a light wave. And as we know, if you hear lightning, you'll see the flash and then you hear it, and the time it takes to get to you is roughly how far away it is. You can sort of time it. It's because the radio waves or the sound waves take much longer to get to you. So Clerk Maxwell sort of discovered this sort of stuff and was playing around with electromagnetic waves, and Heinrich Hertz, interesting, there's a name we know well, discovered the radio waves, and of course people started making use of that. So we use AM radio, FM radio, and of course now digital radio. Now, interesting enough, as you move down that slide, you're getting much, much better quality of sound. So the digital radio really has a high quality of sound. You don't get those crackles, really clean, but it doesn't travel very far. So high quality sound wave, but its ability to move really reduced. Whereas the AM radio is heard over much longer distances. So you can hear AM. So if you're driving out of Melbourne in your car with your AM radio on, your station will stay with you for a long time, a lot longer than FM radio will. So FM radio, of course, is in between. It was much better quality than digital radio, so for playing music, much better than AM. And of course, these days we tend to find the AM radio stations do all the talk, and the FM radio stations have all the music on them, because the FM is much better for music, not so good for talk. AM radio, great for talk, not so good for music. Digital does both of them really well, but you have to be reasonably close to a transponder to get a good signal. So why is that? So we have things called ground waves. So ground waves are transmitted straight enough along the ground. So it follows the natural curve of the Earth. And mobile phones use ground waves. And so you have all those radio towers all spread all over the place on high spots in your suburb, trying to repeat the messages, and clearly they get easily blocked. So those people who live in Mount Martha often complain about the problem with their ground waves. They don't get very good reception in some parts of Mount Martha because that great mountain sitting in the way. It's granitic. May make it even worse. We also have sky waves. Strange enough, they go into the sky, and so they're a low wavelength, and they are transmitted upward into the ionosphere, and then they bounce back down. Unfortunately, that while they can carry further than a ground wave, they do get interrupted by the solar flares and changes in the atmosphere, and you get that sort of interference that you often see on TVs and things. And then, of course, space waves. So waves are greater than 30 megahertz. It actually goes through the ionosphere and hits the satellite and gets bounced back. So these are really handy for sending things from one place to another. So I'm sitting in Australia listening to a broadcast of the news in London. And it happens reasonably quickly. Often see that now on TV news when the reporter's waiting. They sort of cross the reporter on the site and they speak to them, and you watch the person on the other end sort of standing there looking at you. Ah, yes, hello, Ian. And they go, that little delay. Now it's because they're actually using satellites and satellite phones for that purpose, and they bounce them off the space. So it takes a bit longer to come back. Which of course meant we needed satellites up there. So a satellite is actually a moon. So the moon is our natural satellite going around our planet. And then of course we throw up a whole lot of bits of space junk to do different things. And they zip around our planet all the time. There's heaps of them up there. Apparently over 200 artificial satellites orbit our planet. And we have different types. So there's geostationary satellites, and that sort of gives it away a bit. They actually sit above a fixed point. So you might have one above Melbourne. Well, you have one above Australia watching our weather. And it rotates with us. Great for telecommunications because you can send stuff up to that one and then bounce that stuff off to wherever it wants to go, because you can always feed your stuff straight to it because you know where it is. We have low Earth orbit satellites. So low Earth, 320 to 800 Ks. And they're zipping around. They go around every 90 minutes. Very good for land management and geological work because they can sense the details of the land really well. They've revolutionised our understanding of the planet itself. Polar orbit satellites, these are a bit strange. They go around the other way. Instead of going around sort of the equator, they go from pole to pole. Quite high, 850 kilometres and above. And these are used for watching our weather and getting an idea of what's happening with the weather and how it's changing. And they'll go north or south twice a day. So it's a fairly long journey. Of course, all these satellites in the sky have made things really good for if you're out in a boat, or you're out bushwalking, or you're on holiday, or whatever, you try and find places. Or in fact, these days, you're sitting in your car and you're driving from Mount Eliza to Camberwell to a restaurant and you don't know where it is. And you simply type in the details and your car will tell you where to go. And usually you get to the right place. And sometimes, depending on how good the Google map is, you get close to the right place. But essentially, that's using satellites. Now, when the first time I used a GPS, I think it was available to use just 3 satellites to help itself. And essentially, they were working within about 100 metres of where you were, which isn't bad. And these days, of course, they work to about 1 metre. So there's so many satellites up there available to GPS that the ability to work out precisely where you are is very, very strong. And of course, apparently your phone each has a tracking device in it, so they know precisely where you are whenever your phone is turned on. Big Brother is watching. I'll be watch the time. I'll talk over again, won't I? We talked about optic fibres last time. You thought, I think, what the hell is going on here? But of course, optic fibres allow us to take sound vibrations, turn them into light energy, and send that down the optic fibre really fast. So this total internal reflection of light allows us to send light energy quickly and allows us to transform sound energy to light energy and back again at the other end. And it means we can send information really quickly. Well, yeah, quicker than we used to be able to. It could be quicker. And of course, the internet changed our world completely. It wraps all these things together. And so we've got networks of computers using optic fibres and old-fashioned copper wire and digital waves and all that sort of stuff, all bound together wherever it needs to be. And it allows us to communicate with anyone in the world at any time, as long as they've got a device to talk back to us. We don't use Morse code anymore, but all that stuff we send, and the stuff I'm sending right now to you, is coded in ones and zeros, in binary, machine code. But it's a fascinating ability, isn't it? And we'll explore all this stuff with some experiments and have some fun. And I'll see you when you get back from the holidays. I think that's my last slide, wasn't it? Yeah.